This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is very exciting, and it's very different to the weekday show. That's not saying that the weekday show is not exciting, but compared to the weekday show, the weekend show is even more exciting. It is because we are finding the biggest business story of the week, the most remarkable business story, the sleeper story, one that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and our favourite business story. And every week, because it is a competition, we are joined by a judge to pick a winner. And that judge is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean.
Morning, Adam.
Why don't we just jump straight into it today?
Let's do that.
We'll get straight into the biggest story. And of course, Adam, your criteria, we're looking for economic importance and timeliness and melodrama. And that's really the big three.
Subjective bias. I'd actually put that at the top, to be honest.
Topicality and subjective bias also play.
I don't even know what topicality means, but subjective bias, I know that one.
Yes. That's the big variable here, isn't it?
It is.
All right. Sean, after you.
I feel slightly unfair going first because there was only one big story this week, Michael.
Oh, no. I know what you're going to say.
Economy. E-C-O-N-O-M-Y. The economy.
You can't do the economy. I mean, you're going to now because you're a steamroller, but...
So many things happened this week, but three things happened that really matter to Australians. First, the Reserve Bank of Australia dropped its bias towards hiking interest rates. Woohoo! We're all very excited here in the Fear and Greed studios. Instead, it's in neutral. Well, imagine getting really excited about neutral. It's kind of like, what's your favourite colour? White. Oh, really? Yeah, bit the same.
Beige.
Yes, the Reserve Bank is in neutral, and it's also reasonably happy with the trajectory of inflation. It's a baby step. That's how the central bank does things, or at least outside pandemics, that's how the central bank does things. But at least it's shifting. That means the next move in rates will be down, and the majority, but not all, economists believe it will be later this year. The second thing that happened this week that complicates the picture just a touch, the labour force figures. 116,500 new jobs were created last month, pushing the unemployment figure down to 3.7%. That's a much better outcome than expected, and it's great everyone has a job. But it does put pressure on inflation, and the figure convinced some economists that maybe the rate cut might take a bit longer to eventuate. We're talking about rate cuts here. Affects all of us. Adam loves it. The third piece of economic information came from the US. The Federal Reserve made it clear that rates in the world's biggest economy will fall this year, and there will probably be 75 basis points in cuts. Now, Australia tends to follow the US in these things, so what the Fed thinks matters to us here. Won't mention the fact that the Bank of Japan lifted interest rates for the first time since 2007, pre-iPad days, pre-iPhone days, in fact. Etc., etc. Won't mention the fact that the ECB came out and said, we are going to cut rates in June. Won't mention those. We end the week confident that the next move in interest rates will be down. Less confident about when it might happen. Later this year, early next year is a pretty decent bet. Very, very big story this week. Michael, stop groaning, stop rolling your eyes, concede.
I'm not conceding. Because just purely on a technicality, you should be disqualified for doing the economy as a whole. You just can't do it.
You've never done that?
No, never. I pick one element and I use that. I've never introduced the biggest story as being the economy. But you know what? Doesn't matter. I'm moving on because even if you're not disqualified, it is still just the second biggest story of the week. It's the number two because, Sean and Adam, the biggest story in terms of economic impact and in terms of timeliness and newsworthiness and diplomacy and security, regional security and global significance, right? So I'm thinking big picture here. The major developments in the relationship between Australia and China this week, they actually happened this week. Our Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, met with her Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, this week. And the meeting here in Australia covered some pretty delicate subjects, proving just how much the relationship between our two countries has improved. The fact that we're actually able to raise these directly with them. Human rights violations, conduct at sea, the sentence given to a jailed Chinese-Australian academic, all on the agenda. Afterwards, Wang Yi described the economies of China and Australia as being, quote, highly complementary and having great potential. Now, that is a very good sign as Australia continues to push for the remaining tariffs on its exports to be dropped. And what's more, we found out that Beijing's number 2, Premier Li Qiang, will likely be visiting Australia later in the year. Honestly, it has all been about China this week. Even former Prime Minister Paul Keating was in on it, meeting as well with Wang Yi. Mr. Keating said, I love this statement afterwards. He said, the foreign minister was very positive about putting bilateral difficulties behind us as he was encouraged by the government's efforts in restoring appropriate equilibrium between our two countries. Restoring appropriate equilibrium. I don't know about you, Sean. I certainly know about you, Adam, but you will see this and you will go, restoring appropriate equilibrium, that has got biggest story written all over it. Maximum points. Well done, Michael. You are the winner of the first round.
I think Paul Keating would think that Michael's is the biggest story of the week because it involved him.
Yeah, if I'm in the headline, the story is correct.
Anyway, Adam, over to you.
Okay. Sean wins. The significance of all of those data points, the Reserve Bank dropping its hiking bias, unemployment drops to 3.7%. That's massive. The USA backdrop is massive. But also, Sean, how about the immigration figures that were revealed this week?
And if you read between the lines in what I was saying, yes.
Well, that's what I must have done, is I read between the lines because I think those figures are just stunning. Incredible. So, yes, Michael, it is a massive story about Chinese and Australian diplomatic relations. But just this week, it has to lose to Sean's story.
The reason I didn't mention that almost 550,000 net migration was I didn't want to actually encapsulate everything. It was I just wanted a single story.
I'll leave something in the tank.
Yeah.
Bull plop. Bull plop. You know, Adam, come on.
Always a gracious loser,
No,
Michael.
I'm not. No, you can see through this, right? You know, move on. Let's move on.
Righto, Michael. I think it's your turn then.
Okay, most remarkable story. I don't know how many weeks I can get away with putting Donald Trump in the most remarkable category.
You've probably got about 8 more months of it, to be honest.
I reckon this week it is guaranteed because this week there is a difference, right? This week, Australia was drawn into the US political fray. So automatically it's elevated beyond Trump's usual rhetoric. It's now actually kind of crossed that threshold to the point at which this might actually affect Australia as a country, right? So this is why it just ticks all of Adam's boxes. The Republican candidate, obviously Donald Trump, for this year's presidential election, he got stuck into our former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, who's now our ambassador to the United States. He was asked in an interview what he thought about Rudd's previous comments, because in the past, Kevin Rudd has been quite vocal about Trump. He's tweeted about him, saying he drags America and democracy through the mud. And he's also tweeted that he's a traitor to the West. They're actually quite Trump-like tweets, aren't they? Like that if I was to say that Donald Trump had tweeted that someone was a traitor to the West, like you could actually believe that. But it's actually, these are things that Rudd said about Trump. But anyway, in response, Trump said in this interview, I don't know much about him. I heard he was a little bit nasty. I hear he's not the brightest bulb, but I don't know much about him. But if he's at all hostile, he won't be there long. I mean, that's got kind of all the hallmarks of someone who doesn't really know anything and is just kind of making it up as he goes along, doesn't he? But the fact is, this is really quite significant because if he is elected president, he can revoke an ambassador's credentials. And the thing is that the Albanese government has been very clear now post this during the week that they are backing Kevin Rudd as ambassador, which sets us up for a fairly significant showdown with the US in November if Donald Trump wins. And that's not good for our diplomatic relationship. It's not good for trade, certainly not good, obviously, then for the economy. A little quick mention as well of a little more Trump rhetoric, just because it's too good not to include. He declared this week that if we don't win this election, I don't think you're going to have another election in this country, which I don't really understand, but it's just extraordinary. And then he said, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole country. He paid tribute to the people who were jailed over the January 6th Capitol riots, calling them unbelievable patriots and hostages. It is bizarre, yes, but The remarkable story here is that Australia is being drawn into the Trump show, and suddenly the election for the leader of the free world has come a little closer to home, and that is remarkable.
So, Donald Trump saying something off the top of his head without much consideration? Nothing too remarkable in that, Michael. What is remarkable, and this is referring to Adam's bailiwick, Adam's heart, he's already mentioned it in the show. What is remarkable is immigration in this country. Figures this week from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which puts out statistics, shows Australia's migration intake hit a new record.
Holy mother of pearl.
Of 548,800 in the 12 months to the end of last September. There was also a natural increase of 111,000 people. The country's total population rose by 2.5% to nearly 27 million, with the big rise due to that net overseas immigration figure. It's the biggest annual increase since 1952. So that's migration plus natural. During the 12 months, there were 765,900 arrivals, 217,100 departures. Experts say the rise in immigration levels may have peaked, with the number of foreign visa holders expected to fall as visas expire and stricter rules take effect. But still, that many people in the country puts plenty of pressure on the economy, but especially on housing. It's the key reason why rents are so expensive and why there's a housing crisis in Australia. Economic relevance, ticking one of Adam's boxes, as Michael would put it. The government wants to get this number down. It wants to get the immigration numbers down. It's put out a bunch of new rules, particularly around students on that. But Federal Treasury also said last financial year would be the peak of migration. Well, the first quarter after that, we've had more people. This is a big national issue, especially for the housing market. The level of immigration is absolutely remarkable, much more remarkable than Donald Trump being a dickhead.
Language violation, please.
Code alert.
I'm clutching at my pearls here. This is
like
this
a
is
microphone
outrageous.
drop.
Adam, pull him into line.
Okay. So can I just sort of focus on the Donald Trump versus Kevin Rudd for a moment? In the battle of the egos, who would win?
That's a very good question.
Because they've both got monumental egos.
We should make it a three-way and throw in Malcolm Turnbull.
I'm sorry. What was that, Sean?
Like Mount Rushmore. We'll have an ego mountain.
Mind you, what politician doesn't? And it's part and parcel of the job.
I know, but these are extreme. So these are great. That's a great battle. Kevin Rudd went beyond risk for mine. As a diplomat, he was just totally out of order.
Well, but he wasn't a diplomat when he said a bunch of those things. So I'm not standing up for Kevin Rudd in any stretch. But like when he called him nuts and stuff like that, this was after Trump had left. I'm sure Rudd just assumed that his political career was over. Not very diplomatic, though, to your point.
Yes. But I'm sorry, Michael, so close. But again, Sean has to win on this one. The numbers are just staggering. And it's an impact on the economy that is profound, as Sean pointed out, from property prices through to infrastructure and services. It is an absolutely remarkable number, the immigration, and that we're nearly 27 million people in our country. It's incredible.
I think Donald Trump for the next, we need rules around using any Donald Trump story because what he says is so, we've done it around the economy and we've stuck to those rules.
I'm enjoying the remarkable irony of Sean requesting rules around what stories we can and can't do. Are these rules that we then just ignore when we choose to? All right. So it is 2-0. That's not good. We are going to take a quick break. We will come back in a moment and find a sleeper story of the week. All right, we're looking for a sleeper story of the week. So a sleeper story is one that's maybe not getting the attention that it deserves. It's maybe trying to fly under the radar a little bit, being a little sneaky about it all. But we are going to bring it into the light. How do you expose something?
You shine the light on it.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Although, given it's your story, it's probably more like a very, very dim torchlight.
Yeah, it's where your double A's are running a bit low. So anyway, no, the fact is, right, that I am going to go first here. I'm just launching straight into it. The big sleeper story this week is in the property market. And there was a slight reference to it a little bit earlier in Sean's Most Remarkable. But I'm really kind of narrowing it down here. I'm doing something that you would be unfamiliar with, Sean, and just picking one element of a story and focusing on it. So the big sleeper story this week is Domain laying out the evidence for the need for higher density. So we've been heading this way for a while, and Domain's data shows land sizes have been shrinking for a number of years. And yes, prices have been rising, and in many cases quite dramatically, but the data this week shows that increasing density may be the key to improving affordability, because while those prices have been rising, if those land sizes hadn't been shrinking and we hadn't been getting more densely populated, then the average house price would have been much, much higher. And I love this example of Perth, for instance, would see a median house price something like $300,000 higher than it is now, if not for those land sizes shrinking. It is a sleeper story because the evidence is there that we should be embracing greater density. Our population is growing. As we just discussed, we're almost at 27 million people. We are absolutely booming in terms of our population. So the discussion that Domain started this week with this report is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and very, very political, because as soon as you start proposing greater density, as we have seen kind of put forward by certain state governments, you get a lot of NIMBYism, where people just are refusing to have greater density, whether it is kind of duplexes, townhouses, or kind of apartment buildings in their suburbs nearby to their own houses. But this is going to be one of the big political and social challenges of the next decade. Housing supply, affordability, infrastructure planning, and just finding enough space to put that growing population. And housing density is going to be absolutely key to that. And we saw it really coming out this week. It is the sleeper story. I'm going to call it the sleeper story of the decade.
Can Adam, just for your benefit?
Yes.
I just quickly noted down one of the sentences Michael said, because I was a bit confused by what he was saying throughout the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Must we do this?
Yeah.
Yes, we must.
Because while prices have been rising, if those land sizes hadn't been shrinking and we hadn't been getting more densely populated, then the average house price would have been much, much higher.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain that in English?
I thought I demonstrated that with the Perth example. I thought I made that abundantly clear. And Dr. Nicola Powell, I thought, did a very good job of making that clear as well.
Well, she did a great job in the interview.
And you're saying that, Adam, you understood what I was saying, didn't you?
I did have the background of the interview, so I did. Yes.
Faint praise. I did with the background of the interview.
Well, okay, I can go into it in more detail.
No, I'll concede.
You know what, Adam? Can you penalise him? Can you just?
It's not even Sean; it's him.
Yeah, that's right.
Just disqualify him.
Just disqualify it.
Him over there.
Okay, Sean, what have you got?
Look, we might have had this as a sleeper story previously, but this time it's real. The end of the era of big tech is nigh. But a couple of things happened this week that points to government authorities reining in the digital economy, trying to level the playing field. The first one, which is a really big one, it came out of the US, where the Justice Department is suing Apple, claiming it's breaking competition laws by blocking rivals from accessing hardware and software features of its iPhone. We're not just talking financial services here. We're talking all services that use an iPhone. It's the first time a case has accused the iPhone maker of illegally maintaining its dominant position. Now, the Biden government has been fighting big tech ever since it got in. It's got antitrust fights against most of the biggest US tech giants. The Justice Department is already suing Alphabet's Google for monopolization. The Federal Trade Commission is pursuing antitrust cases against Meta and Amazon. Apple, of course, in Europe was hit with a $1.8 billion fine this month for shutting out music streaming rivals from offering cheaper deals. That's all going on. This is a really big case that we heard about this week. The second example this week is Uber agreeing to pay $272 million to Australian taxi drivers in one of the biggest class action settlements in Australia ever. Okay, it's not a big tech company, but it's part of the digital economy. Basically, a Melbourne taxi. There's a lot of grunting and groaning as I'm saying this, and I'm not happy with that. Anyway,
well, and the best part is it's Adam. Like, it wasn't even. It's Adam. Just
sorry, that was unintended.
You look at him just kind of wriggling a little bit. He's not comfortable
He's
listening
not
to this story. He's just
He's upset because this Melbourne taxi driver claimed Uber had harmed him financially by setting up and running its Uber X services in Australia illegally. It grew to a class action, incorporated 8,000 taxi and chartered drivers. Basically, the crux of it was about lost income for those drivers when Uber launched with cheaper and more convenient services. Now, Uber actually began in 2012. It wasn't licensed till 2015. The ACT was first, then New South Wales. Anyway, it's the fifth largest class action settlement in Australian legal history. These two are really good examples of regulators fighting back across the digital economy, and they're starting to win. An excellent sleeper story this week, as it may well have been in previous weeks and probably will be in future weeks, but this week it's a great sleeper story. Adam.
Oh, these are both so good. Subjective bias is going to be the thing that draws them apart for me. And it's really hard because property and tech are both really into it. I was in Melbourne this week, which is buzzing ahead of the Grand Prix today and tomorrow. And I was in Ubers talking with the Uber drivers about the Uber case. It was quite stunning. Even they were.
Of course you were, Adam. Most people get into an Uber and they'll talk about, traffic's pretty bad today. Picked up many people today.
Looking forward to the Grand Prix. Not Adam.
Adam gets in and goes, now, let's talk class action.
What are your feelings? Yeah. In this instance, Titanic battle. Michael, you win. And it's really subjective bias and me for property. And the fact that I love the interview with Dr. Nicola Powell and what the work Domain's doing. And to me, it's just exemplifying the point that no one's figured this out. Everyone knows it's NIMBYism that's stopping it, but we've got to be courageous enough to take it on. And it will impact not only the way we can afford property, but our children and theirs. So I think it's just such a vital long-term topic. And that's why it's my choice for Sleeper Story of the Week.
Okay, it means that there's still a chance here. We're heading into the final question, the favourite story of the week. And of course, this week, the favourite story is brought to you by Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. Sean, you are ahead, so you may go first in this one.
Well, you may think that I'm playing the judge here.
Oh no. No. I know exactly what story you're going to do, and I considered doing it, and I thought, no, I'm not that unethical.
Listeners may not know Adam's previous career. Band manager. In fact, any rock and roll question, not even rock and roll, that's much broader than that. You ask Adam, he's got it. So I was fortunate enough to go and see Wilco during the week, Adam, at Sydney Opera House.
Very good band.
I mentioned, great band, never had a major hit. Highest selling album, 670,000. So we're not exactly talking Taylor Swift here. And so I mentioned this to Adam. He just starts reeling off their albums. I was like, how do you know that? Anyway.
Mermaid Avenue with Billy Bragg, one of the greats.
Yeah, Being There is my favourite. Anyway, look.
God, there's a generation gap on this podcast, isn't there?
My favourite story is the one where Spotify released its annual Loud and Clear report. And it shows that 329,000 songs were streamed 1 million times or more in 2023. Good news. The exciting part is that Spotify has because it has 600 million users worldwide, resulting in trillions of streams, 1,250 artists are now earning at least $1 million a year, including 80% who are not household names. Now, I get you can argue that Spotify rips off the artists, so I'm sort of leaving that to the side. But there are also a bunch of artists who are actually making money that weren't before. Now, so I'm not saying Spotify do it. I don't know whether they do or don't. So that would be my comment on that. In fact, there are 80% of those people making $1 million who don't have a hit, so to speak, on Spotify's top 50 global chart. it kind of democratizes this music thing. Last year, Spotify paid $9 billion to the music industry. That figure has tripled over the past 6 years. Surely, Adam, you'd like that number, $9 billion to the music industry. The number of artists generating at least $1 million or $100,000 or $10,000 has tripled since 2017. And the number of independent artists, so that's DIY or signed to independent labels, has soared, and they receive more than half of Spotify's payments. Isn't it good to see the humbler artist get a go? We're not talking Taylor Swift's here. We're talking Wilcos. We're talking bands that no one's ever heard of or individuals no one's ever heard of. They're making some money. Thank you, Spotify. Favourite story of the week? Michael.
That's a good one. It does. It feels like you have chosen that story very, very cleverly. Look, I was going to pick something frivolous. I was going to pick something fun. I was thinking about kind of like the luxury car maker Bentley reporting its second largest annual profit because uber-rich car buyers are spending a fortune on customizing their cars. I was almost going to talk about how one customer paid a ridiculous amount to have the wood paneling for the car made from trees from his own forest. And then he even had a personalized tree emblem stitched onto the headrests. If I had chosen this story, I probably would have told you that some of the customers...
Hold on, what is going on? What is going on here?
Are we getting to a story or not?
If I had chosen it, this is the thing, this all went into my decision-making process, that I would have told you that some of the customers are getting things like fuel caps made out of jewels, things which I just find remarkable. And I certainly would have talked about rival Rolls-Royce, which, according to The Guardian, has previously made a custom car with a paint job containing 1,000 crushed diamonds in the paint job. And then I would have finished my story.
I would have. So this isn't your story.
Well, no, it's not. And then I would have finished the story by telling you that Bentley offers so many customizable components that they claim there are 46 billion different possible configurations for its cars. It would have been a heck of a story and probably would have won. But.
So please ignore everything Michael has said over the past 2 minutes.
But not really in touch for the man of the people. Instead, very briefly, my favourite story is one that affects nearly every Australian. Super funds. Super fund returns were up for the fourth consecutive month in February.
Oh, you're kidding.
The median growth fund delivered 1.9% over the period, taking the 4-month return to 9%. That is pretty spectacular. This should have been in the most remarkable category as well. That's amazing. It reflects both international share markets and the resilience in the US economy. So if you are like me and Bentleys and Rolls-Royces are well outside your budget, we can all find a little bit of comfort right now in the fact that our super is having a pretty good run. And that is why that is my favourite story.
Do you think, Adam,
yeah,
that this is grounds for the first ever disqualification or not?
No, I chose a story and I did a story. I told you the story I didn't do as well.
Michael, I was talking to Adam.
I just noted.
I don't know if we have enough episode time for the making of Fear and Greed, the weekend edition, because that felt like, hey, meanwhile, when Michael came to his decision, here's the things he didn't choose and why.
You know, that people love behind the scenes things on like TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. And we're talking about the generation gap between us. I kind of think in terms of what people want.
You're not helping yourself.
No, but I mean, honestly, that is pretty remarkable. That is amazing. And how good does that make everyone feel knowing that, oh, okay, good. My super is going up.
This is really hard for me to score because I love the super fund return story.
No. Sorry.
But this somewhat interesting exploration into the Bentley story kind of left me a bit befuddled.
It was just a demonstration of the fact that in the old Michael would have gone, oh yeah, let's just go crazy, let's go frivolous, let's go kind of, oh yeah, Bentleys, that's a great story. But no, I was just pointing out the fact that that's not even the 1%ers. This is the 0.1%. But super funds, I mean, that's for everyone. That is for everyone. So just judge me on the super funds, Adam, because that's what matters.
Oh God.
Yeah, sorry. I can't give this one to you, Michael.
I haven't used this word before, but this is an absolute crock.
Croc.
Crock. Good one. Bonus point for that. But the Spotify data, 600 million users. And, Sean, you can imagine how excited I get, not only about music, but the amount of data involved here.
Oh, God.
It is so interesting.
It is.
I think it's remarkable figures. There is a little bit of a tone of protestation, I think, in the Spotify data. So, yeah, we're actually paying artists, It's like, okay. But I really do like the information. I think it's so useful and interesting. But, Sean, I have to give this one to you. Favourite story of the week.
Excellent decision, Adam. Excellent. Thank you.
And tell us the points overall.
Yeah.
So it's 3-1 to Sean on the story count. But it was very, very close, actually. So Sean, 93 out of 100. Michael, 91 out of 100.
Surprisingly, that doesn't actually make me feel that much better.
Well, you still lost.
Ooh. Savage.
That was savage from the judge.
There's that theory about on the Olympic podium, coming first is obviously brilliant. Coming second for many in terms of how they feel about it is worse than coming third because they could have nearly got there. Whereas if you come third, you're kind of grateful for the medal. So I get it. Being so close, it doesn't probably feel that great. But next week, Michael, there's always next week.
Adam, I don't want to bring a little fault into your argument. There's only 2 players in this particular show.
No. Don't forget ASIC. ASIC got points a couple of weeks ago. So ASIC is our third honorary competitor. So this week it is Sean first place, Michael Thompson second, and ASIC third on 0 points this week. All right. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. Go and check out those videos that I keep on going on about. X and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great weekend.